All right. Well, a very good evening, everyone, and welcome to Blue Sunday here on In the Blue Corner channel. Vince Loccisano with you, and joined as usual on a Sunday night by Steve Khatib. Good evening to you, Steve.
Good evening, Vince.
How are you, mate?
Not too bad. What about yourself?
Not bad. Our team, Carlton Football Club, continues to baffle us, doesn't it? One week it looks like world beaters. The next week they drop a game that we probably all expected them to win.
Well,
What's your take on what happened on Friday night?
I think the wins are never as good as they are, and the losses are never as bad as they are. So,
or as bad as they seem.
They say absolutely. So the emotion of a supporter, the roller coaster of on one week to another's performance, whether essentially you're going to win the flag to battle for a place in the eight. It's interesting, isn't it? I think when you put all the emotion aside, on the balance of those two games, there's good football, but when it's played on our terms, however, we didn't really do enough, as we had done in some of the other games. We didn't do enough to find a way to win. I think against, like, if you look at the Port Adelaide and Hawthorn game, we did enough in those last quarters when it was sort of pretty close within a kick or so to find a way to win. But in this game, I think my opinion is that I'm not saying Voss was out-coached, but Ratton came with a plan and executed that plan very, very well. And regardless of possession being 9/10 of the law, as they say, it sort of meant nothing. And I know they're going to say bad kicking and all the rest of it as well. People are going to say that, but there was a lot of rushed behinds as well in that. So look, it was probably 3 or 4 shots a goal that we could have kicked to Conning and Hewitt and a few others. But at the end of the day, St Kilda were more clinical. They played a more, if you want to call it in a soccer round ball parlance, attacking style of game. You know what I mean? Whereas they sort of played on a counter attack opposed to owning the possession. We pinned them into our own half for long periods, but the congestion and sort of lack of those clearances where we just win the ball out of the middle and then burst and kick it directly to one-on-ones with our forwards. We didn't have a lot of those, but when we did, we looked very dangerous, and that seems to be the trend, isn't it? When we've been getting those clearances, and I know Voss was very prickly when he was asked about that in the press conference, saying that you're a clearance contested footy side, aren't you? And he sort of didn't like that. But at the end of the day, Carlton probably was beaten, or at least matched in that part of the game, and didn't have a lot else to sort of go with St Kilda on. It wasn't the end of the world, though, the game, really, was it? I mean, you look at that game as a Carlton supporter, the emotion of losing. We're not that bad, but then again, we're not probably as good as the week before either. Anyway, I've gone around in circles, but that's my take.
That's all right. Yeah, look, it's an interesting opinion and I guess analysis of the game. I predicted that Carlton would win this game by 8 goals, so I only got it wrong by about 10.5 goals. But I still think that if we're playing at our best and we're playing it, as you said, on our terms, we would be that much better than them. But I agree with you. I think Ratton came with a plan. They executed that plan very, very well. I don't believe our players nor our coaching staff respected St Kilda enough, even heading into the game. They allowed Brad Hill and young Sinclair to run rampant throughout the entire game, if you ask me. They had it more on their terms than we had it on ours, but at the same time, at times during that game, it just felt like we could just bust the game open at any time. We put them under some enormous pressure. which they absorbed, and to their credit, they counter-attacked and unexpectedly all of a sudden got 2 or 3 goals in a row and got that lead again. We, I think, got within 5 points in the last quarter.
Yep.
And yet they still ran away with it. In fact, I think we might have even hit the front by a point heading into that last quarter, or at some point early in the last quarter.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think we might have even hit the lead, but they somehow managed to continue fighting. And look, I think that was a game where the side who desperately wanted the win more ended up with the chocolates. It's not that Carlton couldn't have won. We could have won. We probably should have won. And yes, bad kicking is bad football, and there was, a numerous amount of shots for goal that were, unexpectedly inaccurate. Some shots even from 20 and 30 metres out that should have been kicked. Hewitt, De Koning, Curnow, Mackay, all of them were guilty at times of poor shots for goal or poor selection of kick in the case of Harry Mackay. A couple of times you went for that one around the corner and just, I think one went out in the full and another one barely made it for a point.
Yeah, but so the week before he kicks those and all the supporters say how good he is. True?
Yeah, look, I know that. But sometimes you've got also... Those
bananas? Yeah. Or what check sides or whatever?
Look, I guess you got to take the good with the bad, don't you, with that style of shot for goal. But I just don't think we played a very intelligent game. We took the pressure. Oh, you can't say that we didn't try. I think the effort was there, and we put them under enormous pressure at some stages during that game. But I just think the execution was poor. Yeah. They were
not just in execution in front of goal, but towards goal. When they had the ball, they used it in a smarter, more direct fashion, and we didn't.
Yeah, and they also changed the angles on a lot of what they had been doing. They found ways to come through the corridor, and they really cut us up quite a lot moving forward into their forward line. The transition was quite brilliant at times. And their overhead marking, their contested marking seemed to be a lot better than us, I would say, throughout that game. There were a lot of passes that went into their forward line, which their players just, basically clunked one grab marks. And, they were far more efficient and far more accurate in front of goal. And I think that's what got them over the line. And they're just pure desire to win.
Well, when we say we underestimated them, I mean, King, Membry, and a few of their other players, they're decent footballers, right? We're not talking. They're still a reasonal side.
Of course.
Yeah.
Look, they haven't won 9 matches for the year for nothing. 9 out of the first 15 or whatever it is. I think they had their backs to the wall. They knew that if they dropped that game, it was probably curtains for the season. Or it would make it extremely difficult to make the 8. They're still out of the 8 now, as it stands, only on percentage, but nevertheless they're still needing to, make every week a winning.
It's a mini final every week for them. Yeah,
it's almost an elimination final for them every week. I noticed that Fremantle's only just gotten over the line tonight against Port Adelaide, so that probably, you would think, is going to rule a line through Port Adelaide for the season now, you would think.
And probably Gold Coast as well.
And Gold Coast, having both lost. Gold Coast the last 2 weeks by very narrow margins. That probably puts a nail in their coffin for the season. So realistically, you've only got probably, 10 teams that can make the 8, including the Western Bulldogs and St Kilda, who are currently out of the 8 on 8. Oh, well, Western Bulldogs on 8 wins and St Kilda on 9. And even the Bulldogs losing the other day, that wouldn't have done their chances much good, would it?
No, it puts pressure on them, doesn't it?
By the way, everyone, if you're watching us here tonight and you'd like to take part in the show and pass on a comment, or you'd like to express your opinion or ask Steve or myself a question, all means, you can do that. Go to our Facebook page in the blue corner and put in the comments your opinions and your questions, and we'll certainly do our best to put those up on screen if they're something relevant. Otherwise, you can go to our YouTube page as well, our YouTube channel, in the blue corner. All righty. Well, Steve, I guess let's try and take apart this game a little bit. It was, again, a slow start. I noticed that we've been starting quite slowly in a lot of our games. I think they kicked the first 3 and then we kicked the last 2 goals of that first quarter, but they went in with an 8-point lead at quarter time. But what's the reason for these slow starts, do you think? We started slow the previous week as well. I think Fremantle and Richmond as well. I think we started fairly slowly.
Yeah, look, I can't say other than teams have obviously come to play when they play Carlton at the moment. That's probably all I could put it down to. I don't think there's any real science to that, but it's a bit concerning, giving up leads early in games.
Well, then, of course, after St Kilda scored the first 3, we then went and scored the next 5.
Yeah.
To go up by a couple of goals early into the second quarter. And it looked like we were really on a roll and we might have been able to break the game wide open. But
Absolutely. So you're looking at that game there and you're thinking, okay, well, there's 5 goals in a row. The fact that St Kilda have allowed Carlton to score 5 goals in a row, it's not just the scoreboard, but the trend of the momentum and the fact that you'd think this would be a 1 goal or 2 goal at a time for each side game, some give, some take, a tug of war. It wasn't. It was just 5 goals in a row, and you thought, well, this is the real St Kilda. They've probably come out for the first quarter, fired up what they spoke about internally during the week, all that nice stuff, and you can play an emotion for 1 quarter as they do for people's 300th games and everything like that. But then the real team, essentially, as the game goes on, appears. And that's what it looked like. That is really what it looked like. But to their credit, St Kilda, they wrestled the momentum back after 5 goals, and that's not an easy feat, is it?
No, look, you're right. I had that feeling too. I thought, oh, here we go. They've come with a rush of emotion and motivation for the first half of the first quarter, put the first 3 goals on the board, and all of a sudden we've worked them out, and now we've scored 5 in a row, and we'll probably blow them out of the water from here. Yeah. Well, no, they scored the next 4. And then I think we got a late one in the second, and we went in at half time, basically, only 5 points down, but we should have been at least 2 or 3 goals up, you would have thought.
Well, so that's the question, right? Just there. If we perceive ourselves to be the better team, which of course every team thinks they're the better team, but on form, you would say Carlton is the better team.
Yeah.
Why do they let St Kilda score those next 4 goals after banging 5 on? That's really...
Well, it's a good question, isn't it? It's mental stuff, mental application.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the third quarter, which is the one I thought that cost Carlton the game, because this quarter here, we came out and really put some pressure on. I don't know what it was, but we only kicked 1 goal, 6 for the quarter. Could easily have been 6 goals, 1 instead. And the game would have been over if we had
a ring of players around the 50.
Yep. They couldn't burst through their own defence. Yeah.
It was coming back in with interest, as they say, wasn't it? The ball was just bouncing straight back in.
Yes.
Quickly as it came out.
Yep.
And then you thought, it's a matter of time before that damn wall breaks. But as much as the ball was coming back in, I think we start getting into the intelligence. This is what you're talking about, playing smart football, right?
Yeah.
I don't think we were spotting up, lowering our eyes. I don't think we were looking for targets. I think we were bombing it back in just as well it was coming out. I think if you kicked it on Harry's head, it was all about kicking it on Harry's head or Charlie's head and They'd take a mark and clunk a mark. It was very agricultural, the entry form of, the form of forward 50 entry. It wasn't, kicking to the corridor, lowering your eyes, finding an option, being smart. None of that. And yeah, we hit a few targets in there. De Koning and Hewitt's shots for goal and so forth were sodas that you would think they would kick.
You would have thought, yeah.
But the majority of the entries were poor, I thought, and we didn't really take advantage of that.
As often happens, you only get domination for so long before the other side makes you pay. And St Kilda in the second half of that quarter managed to kick 3 goals to nothing after we'd basically gotten, I think we were 7 goals. 7 goals, 9 or 10 or whatever it was at the time, and they were 7-6. I think we were about 4 points in front or something at some point in that third quarter. Should have been miles ahead, and then all of a sudden they kicked 3 goals. And
tactically, our half-backs got sucked up the ground.
Yeah.
After pushing for those 50 entries, got pulled deep up the ground into our forward line, and they just flipped it over the back.
They flipped it over the back, yeah. Well, in the end, three-quarter time, they went in.
Open goals. Yeah.
Well, they had a 2-goal lead at three-quarter time, which is hardly insurmountable, but 10-7-67 to 7-13-55.
Not exactly.
But, 1 goal 6. Yeah. 1 goal 6 by us. And then, of course, in the last quarter, we kicked 3 goals 5, and they kicked 4 goals 2. So they increased the lead to 15 points by the end of it. And I think they ended up being 21 points up at one stage, and I think we got a late goal. So the game was over by the time we got that last goal. But, they were far more efficient. And I just felt like they had everything on the line and they played like it. And we didn't respect them enough.
Yeah.
We didn't respect their players, and I don't think our coaches respected enough of what they were capable of doing either. In a lot of ways, I think ratting out Coach Voss on the night, to be honest.
Yeah, I mentioned I don't know if he out-coached Voss, but I certainly think he coached very well. But I suppose that is out coaching.
Well, can you tell me from a team selection point of view, why? I mean, all year we've seen like-for-like changes. So Jordan Boyd goes out of the side injured. He's basically a defender, like a back pocket. Why would Liam Stocker not have come into the side after playing very well in the VFL the week before and the week before that? And yet they brought in Chera, who's a midfielder who looked completely underdone, strapped up like a horse that was just coming back from a long injury. I couldn't work that out. I really couldn't. And it just, to me, there was a few things that as a club we did wrong during the week. We started listening to our own media because everyone was talking about Carlton now being a potential grand finalist and all this sort of talk. Just talk about getting ahead of yourselves. I think the players must have started believing their own media because
it's a problem with the PR.
They played like movie stars rather than like footballers on the weekend.
The problem with having probably the best PR firms, 3 PR firms in the AFL, Carlton has externally hired to ensure that the media narrative covers them well. The problem with the only problem with it is you can create as much publicity as you want or cover up things, but you don't want it to get into the players' heads, do you?
No, and I don't know. I just I think it continues to add question marks to what we're all about. You lose a game like that, big stage, Friday night, home game, big crowd. Great to see the return of the Wolf on Friday night with, of course, Adam Sard being nominated by Ange Christou as the new successor of the Wolf. It certainly did take off thanks to Rocco and all the boys at the Jumper Punch getting right behind that. But I think all of the peripherals were right, but I just think that the players and the coaches didn't go into that game well prepared enough. And I think they underestimated what St Kilda was capable of.
Yeah,
anyway,
well,
we've got some comments, have we? We've got people, anyone putting up comments? Here we go. Cassandra. Thanks for joining us tonight. Saints were coming. They were sick leading up to this game, and now they're hungry again. Apparently, it was kept quiet. I tipped the Saints because of this, begrudgingly. Oh, well, there you go.
If you took the $2.40, I don't know what something like that it was. It was pretty.
Was it generous odds? Was it?
Oh yeah, I wouldn't take $2.40, but nonetheless, yeah.
There must have been some support for St Kilda because some people must have known that they were going to go in all guns blazing. Gina Harris, how are you, Gina? I'm with you. Chera can't get thrown under the bus like that. Freo was like a final last week. Yeah, it probably was. It's often amazing how a lot of people thought we'd probably lose to Freo and beat St Kilda, and in the end, it turned out the other way around. You win a game like the Fremantle game, and all of a sudden you feel good about yourself, and all of the media is positive, and I think that can just take that psychological edge off the players. Look, I don't think we did a lot wrong, but our efficiency wasn't good with hand and foot. I think probably overdid some of the handball. And, I think our efficiency with foot wasn't too flash either. But, I just think that we didn't make the most of our goal-scoring opportunities. Paddy Dow. This is Shazza White. Hi, Shazza. Paddy Dow should be in the side a lot more. Are we going to have this as a weekly discussion, are we? Well, unfortunately for you, Shazza, the VFL team didn't play this weekend. They had a bye. So I dare say if Michael Voss wants to make some changes next week and make a few players pay for the loss, he's going to have to bring in players that haven't played for a couple of weeks. I do believe Jacob Wiedering's ready to come back against West Coast, so I think he'll be a definite in. Not sure who goes out for him, whether it's Brodie Kemp or whether it's someone else. But I think that'll be one change. Whether there's any other changes, I'm not sure. Did you notice anyone injured at all, Steve, coming out of the game?
Zard. Well, I don't know how injured he was, but he certainly.
I think he got knocked about in the head. I think he should be right to go.
Yeah, I did notice.
I don't think he's injured.
I noticed he was iced up though, but I think they're all iced up, aren't they? Normally. Yeah,
as usual. Yeah. Peter Vlahos, good to see you, Peter. Sinclair and Hill were able to run riot. Yes, well, I did mention that. I don't think we respected them enough. Brad Hill can really cut you up if you let him. I know that Voss put Cottrell. Sorry?
Hill's been much maligned, though, hasn't he? And I think...
well, he was on Walsh in the first quarter.
Yeah.
And I think they both got the same amount of possessions, but Hill had absolutely miles on him when it came to metres gained. Yeah. I think Walsh's possessions ended up having... I think I saw something up on the TV screen saying minus 17 metres. Like he was actually going backwards more than he was going forwards with his possessions.
Yeah,
Sam Walsh.
It makes sense, though. Hill has that tank to run with a Walsh. Not many players had that tank to...
Well, Voss's response to that was to take Walsh off him and put Cottrell onto Hill. And I think he did a pretty good job of it in the second quarter, although I think Hill still continued to, run right in the third and fourth quarters. So, yeah, it was an interesting tactical battle. But I think St Kilda won that tactical battle on the night.
Yeah.
Well, let's get into the votes, shall we? Who did you think was our 3, 2, and 1, Steve?
It was a difficult one. It was I wouldn't say it was a team effort. That's what you normally say when the team wins.
Yeah.
Look, I thought I thought, sorry, without giving you the straight up, I think
Sure.
definitely one vote has to go to Jesse Motlop, albeit
He had some impact.
He didn't get a lot of the ball all the time, but the goals he kicked and the pressure acts that he placed, and just for an up and comer, I think it was a big step up for him. I think that was probably I wouldn't say he's made it in the big league, but it certainly was show what he can offer. So that was certainly one vote. Doherty was very, very serviceable and strong and repelling a lot of attacks and going back with the flight and getting a lot of possessions and intercepting. So I gave him 2 votes. The 3 votes was really difficult. Vince, I really struggled to think of.
So who do you think was the best player on the ground for Carlton? That's what you really got to think about.
Well, this is right, and I don't know if we had an absolute standout for mine. It's difficult.
Well, I can tell you from a disposals point of view, not that disposals mean everything. Walsh had the most with 33, but that included 21 hand passes. Cripps had 31 disposals, which also included 21 hand passes. So Walsh had 12 kicks and Cripps had 10. That was the difference. Walsh had 2 more kicks. They both had 21 hand passes out of 30-odd possessions. Yeah. So they had a lot of the ball, but I don't know.
I thought Sard or Kennedy is a difficult one.
Sard, if you remember, got hit in the first quarter fairly hard.
That's right.
And then he came back on and played really, really well.
Yeah. So look, I probably now I'm going to have to readjust.
And Kennedy kicked 2. And Kennedy kicked 2 goals, of course, apart from getting 21 possessions.
Yeah, so I've got to put Kennedy in there as well somewhere, but Sard probably for mine. Really, I mean, gutsy performance as well. Maybe if I can have 2 1-voters or 2 voters, I'd put
split the third vote. Isn't it what they used to do? Split the third vote. Yeah.
Anyway, that was my thoughts.
So who did you say was the best Carlton player with 3 votes?
I'd have to put probably Sard, I'd say.
Sard. Followed by Kennedy?
Yeah, probably Kennedy. And then it's hard with Doherty and Motlop probably.
Okay. There. Interesting. Yes, I'd go along with a lot of that. I also gave Sard my 3. I thought he was a really dour defender. And he did a lot of defending, and he did distribute the ball very well. And of course, he was helped by about 40,000 Carlton fans screaming "Wolf" every time he kicked the ball.
Hasn't he really changed his game, Vince? Like, I mean, this is a player that
far more defensive.
Come to Carlton on big money. The talk out of Essendon at the time was he wanted to play the way he wanted to play, not the way the coach wanted him to play. Was still offered decent money at Essendon, chose to leave. Allegedly, the president bought him a car or something, or whatever occurred. Had a big reputation to fill, considering a lot of boom recruits have been busts. Almost most of them have, and has actually really become a selfless player. Yet he's been the sort of player that has had to, had the luxury of running off, almost sometimes perceived to not have a man, yet he's almost running 2 ways and getting back to get a man. He's doing both. I mean, he's got to be one of the most improved players.
Yeah. Since last year, definitely. He's certainly added a far more defensive side to his game, and he's playing defence first, and then when he gets the opportunity to attack, then he'll attack at the right time.
And then he runs back the other way. So, yes, I agree with that. And of all of the so-called high-price recruits that we've managed to secure from other clubs, he would be one of the best, if not the best of them, because I really believe that what's his name? Chera is still jury's out. Still a bit early to judge him yet. And McGovern and Martin and Zach Williams. The jury's in, and we're not getting value for money at the moment. They'll need to go to appeal.
So anyway, I went Sard for 3. I do think, despite what some people might say, I still think Walsh battled his guts out for 33 possessions on the night. I gave him the 2. And, I managed to find 1 for Kennedy as well. I think he did pretty well on the night. But seriously, there was a lot of disappointing players who didn't do a lot. I think it wasn't Josh Honey's best performance. He might be struggling to keep his spot in the side after that one. Jack Nunes didn't have the best game. He's been in really good form lately, but I didn't think he did much. Corey Durden's another one who, to me, is a bit of a worry. That's probably his 3rd or maybe even 4th quiet match in a row. Again, didn't trouble the scoreboard. I think he only kicked 1 point from 6 kicks. Some of these guys, I don't know, they must be looking at them and thinking, is it time for them to go back to the VFL and try and find some form, especially players like Durden.
Well, Durden, big raps, lots of tricks, early round pick.
And now that Jesse Motlop's come good, by the way, and I agree with your comment on Motlop. I think we've found someone with a little bit of X factor, a little bit of excitement machine about that kid.
Yeah.
He's only 18.
The goal that he kicked, was it the 3rd quarter? I'm not sure. The ability, that lateral movement, that side step, keeping the ball and then keeping the arms free for the tackle, shimming the hips, that lateral movement, running one way, then kicking the other way, all happening.
You'd have to say that that's very typical of a lot of the Indigenous players. They're able to, I don't know what it is about them, but they just seem to have this ability to change direction quickly. They're very light on their feet.
Yeah.
And
it's like in very few movements too. So the defender has no time to react at all.
No. That's right.
He's past the defender, but by the time the arms are gone the other way to tackle him. Just amazing. Really, that goal and the speed, and also he knew what he was doing. As soon as he got the ball, he knew he was going to sell the candy one way, shimmy, go the other way, and then kick it off the out. He kind of like knew it. It was like a drill. Amazing. Undefeatable.
I think we've found a good one there. I really do. I think we've found a very capable and talented young kid, and hopefully in the spirit of Eddie Betts, hopefully he can start becoming the next Eddie Betts at Carlton. Yeah,
I think a little different to Betts, but
of course they're all different. But I mean, in the same way that Eddie Betts captured our imagination, I'd like to think Jesse Motlop can do the same for us. Gina, question. We love questions here on In the Blue Corner. I've heard so many numerous posts on our captain. He's handballing more than kicking. We know he did that on previous occasions when his back was screwed. Injured, I think is the word. I've heard it's back to what it was last year. Is he playing again with a back injury? Good question, Gina. Very good question. I don't think the club's going to come out and tell the opposition that, Patrick Cripps has got fractures in his back again. I think they'd be keeping that one very quiet if that was the case. But it does appear that he's gone to some extent back into his shell. I think when he was playing those blistering games early in the season, and he was clearly best on the ground, back to his old form, and everyone was saying, geez, he's not only back to his best, but he's added some goals into his game. He was starting to kick 2 and 3 goals a game. We haven't seen that for a little while from Cripper. And, he seems to have gone back to the sort of football that he was playing in the last couple of years in recent weeks. What do you think, Steve?
Look, in his defence...
That's my perception anyway.
Yeah, he's probably carrying something, and all players do at the middle of the season, right? They get something that they keep playing on and get injections of the legal
knocks and bruises,
injections to keep them going legally. But we do have a higher handball to kick ratio now based on the game plan, don't we? So you are going to naturally handball a little bit more, but yeah.
Well, he's a midfield and contested bull, really, isn't he? I mean, he's in there getting that first possession after the hit outs, and he's trying to shark the ball, and more often than not, he's probably going to be getting the quick hand pass away.
Yeah. So are they using him in that role more? I think the question is, if he's not injured, are they using him in that role more, and why not let him kick more? I think why, and they're questions that if you had intelligent journalists, they'd actually ask the coaches. But instead, you've either got all these Dorothy Dix questions at those midweek press conferences asked, or after the game, they're just trying to analyse the game just for key moments to get a reaction to write a story the next day that they've got 45 minutes to put together before the papers go to print, right? So, I mean, these are great questions, and it's good to see our audience analysing the game as they do and looking into it more, because these are things I think supporters really want to hear, don't they?
No, you're quite right.
We don't get that.
You're quite right, and I think those post-match press conferences, honestly, I know what your view is on them, and I'd be interested to hear what our viewers think of them. I think they are a complete waste of time. Very, very few questions ever get asked that all of us are thinking of. It's the usual, so what did you make of that performance, Michael? Well, in other words, tell us what you want to tell us, and then don't tell us what you don't want to tell us.
Tell us your notes that you've been given by the PR company.
Yeah, and of course, Michael Boss has been given.
And make sure the Gatorade's in the shot, and all Great Southern Bank and everyone else gets a go too, right?
Yeah. It's a sponsor pleasing exercise.
Yeah.
But really, and the other thing I've got to say about these press conferences, one of my real bugbears is, for all of the millions and millions and millions of dollars, it's $1 billion industry, the AFL, what they can't spend a few dollars giving microphones to these journalists so that we can actually hear the damn questions. Most of the time, you can't even hear the questions because they're mumbling it out, because they're in the seats 15 rows back and no one can hear the question. And yet the coach has got a microphone in front of him. Why can't they put a microphone where these journalists are? Even if they've got to provide one, that they've got to stand up and line up behind each other to ask a question, let them do that. But at least we, the fans, can hear what the questions are.
It's like a Carlton
honestly, it's a total waste of bloody time.
Like a Carlton AGM where the people in the crowd don't get the microphone. They get it sort of taken away from or hidden.
Well, let's not go there now. But, yeah, I mean, look, seriously, if we're running an industry that's going to be taken seriously, we've got to have press conferences where, at least these journalists have got to be given a microphone to ask the question. We shouldn't have to strain to hear what the question was before the coach answers it. Why doesn't anyone at the AFL actually do something about this? I mean, Gillon McLachlan, before you leave, how about fixing that? It's the easiest thing in the world to fix. Spend a few $100s and get a bloody microphone there, for Christ's sake.
Or a couple of them. Yeah.
It's one of my real, the old, hey, it's Saturday, what cheeses me off?
Yeah.
That's one of the things that cheeses me off. All right.
That was a good segment.
All right, then. Steve, one of the other things about Friday night is that you would have noticed that Carlton wore quite a lot of orange as part of the annual Carlton Respects program. And this was the game that was designated as the Carlton Respect game. It seems to be a weekly thing in the AFL. You've got to have some sort of, some sort of purpose to the game, or it's a cup between two teams that are playing for a particular cup or medal.
It was the Jack Nunes Cup, wasn't it?
The Jack Nunes Cup? No, I don't think so. It could easily have been the Ken Sheldon, the Alex Marcoux, Warren Jones, Ricky Nixon, Ian Muller, How many other former Carlton players went to St Kilda back in the 80s?
The Val Perovic
Val Perovic went from St Kilda to Carlton.
Yeah,
He went the other way.
Yeah,
he went the
enough.
other way. Matthew Lappin's another one who went from St Kilda to Carlton. No. No. Craig Devonport? I don't think so. So what did you think of the fact that we wear these orange socks once a year? What do you think of this? Oh, there you go. Fabio's got 0-7. The Carlton respects curse. There you go. Everyone, every time Carlton has a Carlton respects game, go and put your money on the opposition.
Well,
and you'll make money out of it. Based on that statistic.
Carlton respects needs to be a little bit also about respecting the opposition. If you know what I'm trying to say.
Carlton respects, but it doesn't respect the opposition. Yeah. Look, is there anything in that? Is there anything in the fact that we are 0-7 on these games? Is it a distraction? Is it in some way affecting the team's, preparation or affecting its performance on the day? What do you think?
Look, no, I don't.
The Hamill Cup. Yes, of course. Aaron Hamill, there's another one. Good on you, Peter.
John Elliott, if he was still around, could present that. But anyway.
Yes. I don't think so, somehow. So is there anything in it? 0-7 on these Carlton respects games? Or is it pure coincidence?
No, look, I think we've been that bad for so long that we wouldn't have beaten many teams regardless. This year probably we'll be favourites for that game, but most of the time we weren't favourites for those games. So I probably wouldn't necessarily say that you could put an absolute curse on it, but well, there is a big focus on it, and it's a big deal to Carlton, I suppose, internally, but it shouldn't distract from the performance, surely, if you're switched on.
Yeah, I know. Any more social justice programs that we need to get involved with? Don't get me wrong. Look, don't get me wrong. And the thing is this: if you come on and say, this is all unnecessary stuff, and we shouldn't be distracting our team and whatever, or we shouldn't be complicating football with all of these, social justice issues and what have you, then you get labelled as, insensitive or, the usual things, racist, sexist, or whatever. You can support measures to, bring awareness to domestic violence or to minimise domestic violence. But does it have to involve football all the time? I mean, is AFL football now becoming so absorbed with all of this stuff that it now? I just question whether there's any impact with all of this anymore. There's so much of it from week to week. But I just wonder whether we've been
So
saturated with this stuff.
Let's highlight the hypocrisy, shall we? Let's highlight. Okay, so I think we put a caveat on any of these comments to say, of course, respecting women, men, binary, non-binary, whatever is got to be a given, right? Has to be number one. You've got to respect each other. Everyone's got to respect everyone, and definitely that's a good idea. It's not a bad idea.
Yep.
However, how can you have a Carlton Respects program and be genuine about it? I'm not saying don't. You've got because
this is specifically targeted at domestic violence, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay. So when $21 million of revenue from poker machines is derived by Carlton Football Club, how can that match? How does that match? You just tell me that. Now that doesn't mean I'm not for Carlton Respects, but how does that align? You tell me how that aligns. Could anyone tell me how that aligns? Can anyone say that aligns? And if anyone says that aligns, I'm open to it. But how do you have that on one hand, and on the other hand, you've got the football club that has the highest gaming revenue from poker machines, will, as year after year after year, when the question gets asked at annual general meetings, dances around the subject, ignores it, doesn't answer members' questions.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying don't have poker machine revenue, but on one hand, how can you have that? On the other hand, you say we respect domestic violence when the linkages, studies have,
Oh, look, studies have proven beyond any doubt that people who have blown their money on poker machines have often taken out their frustration on their partners at home. In a lot of cases with men, it's they bash their wives or partners. And you're right. You can't possibly justify taking $21 million a year as pokie machine revenue and then say, on the other hand, we support measures to minimise domestic violence, and we're having this Carlton Respects program, and we're going to wear all these orange socks to bring awareness to it.
It's not just the night that person comes home and knocks off their pay or something, but it's the ongoing element too. It's the cyclical nature of it all. Then it's the kids see it. Then the kids see it.
Yeah.
And what do the kids do? Repeat potentially that behaviour. They think that's okay. They role model it.
Of course.
Naturally, subliminally. I'm not a psychologist, but come on, that's how it's been proven.
Sure.
So we're not just talking about and then the AFL, addicted to the revenue that they are, have all of this gaming revenue coming, all the gambling ads coming on during the Carlton Respects game. And then the commentators on Channel 7 say how great and Foxtel say how great a cause it is. Like, how do they keep a straight face when the sports bet ad's just been on 5 seconds earlier?
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, it is hypocrisy 101.
So whether it's pokey revenue or gambling revenue on football, for example, it's all the same. It can cause massive losses, and when it does that, people can turn their frustrations onto their own parents.
Social damage, the domino effect of the social damage that all of that stuff does, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Now, so does that mean so if you're fed income and you're honest about it?
Mm-hmm. So what are you saying? That Carlton, you're saying that therefore Carlton should either A, give up the gambling revenue if it's going to be fair income about supporting the Carlton Respects program, or B, stop being false, stop being politically correct by supporting such a program, when on the other hand, you're a bunch of hypocrites because you're taking $21 million in gambling revenue.
I mean, well,
it's got to be one or the other. That's what you're really saying, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you're not going to be a hypocrite, if Carlton's board of directors are not going to be a bunch of hypocrites about this, they should either, one, find another $21 million worth of revenue elsewhere, or two, do away with the Carlton Respects program because it makes you look like a bunch of hypocrites.
If they're going to continue this program, which I'm sure they're committed to, show the members an exit strategy. Mm-hmm. I know you can't just turn the tap off straight away with $21 million of revenue. It doesn't happen that way. It's not that easy. A bit like, I'm not going to get into politics with you, Vince, but it's a bit like going from wind or solar to we're not going to go there, right?
We've got the world's richest coal reserves, and we're just selling it overseas and not using it for ourselves.
You can't just transition him straight away, but show us an exit plan, right? And show walk the walk, right? Show us how you'd really respect.
Yeah.
And I asked this question at an AGM when Respects was being launched. I think it might have been, or was around that time, 6 years ago.
2014, 2015.
Yeah, we're around that. And you just don't get a straight answer. It's and I think this question's been asked so many times by so many people. So anyway, if you really want to do that, be serious with your members and be fair income, because I think most members, if this question was asked, the one that you asked, do you have one or the other? They would say it's a great question, but it's sort of one of those elephant in the room that we just don't talk about enough.
Do you think the average Carlton member doesn't care about the fact that, you know, we're taking $21 million worth of gambling revenue at the same time as promoting anti-domestic domestic violence? Do you think they associate the two with each other, or are they not even thinking that far or that deeply?
I think the average Carlton member, unfortunately, has so many things going on in their life that football's an escape, which fair enough. And I think that they don't really think enough about it. But if the club presented it to them that way, which of course they're not going to, they would agree. I think most people would agree with that.
Well, it looks like the club's board has been getting away with this sort of hypocrisy for years, and it doesn't look like anyone's really kicking up a stink about it. They're quite happy for the club to keep taking their $20 million a year in gambling revenue from pokie machines, despite the fact that it also supports a program that's meant to bring awareness to the whole domestic violence issue.
Pretty much. And they just keep doing it every year.
The hypocrisy continues.
It's kind of like, look over there, right? Look over there. Look at all the great stuff. And look, I've looked into it, right? They've done some good things, and it is it seems like a pretty good program, right? I'm not saying it's a bad program, but I can't see how you talk about cultural pillars or cultural values or living values or changing culture or organizational culture and all these, buzzwords. But I mean, how do you have that right when it's just based on something that contravenes it? I just don't get it.
Yep. Well, one of the other things that's happened during the week, in fact, only in the last day or so, is an email has come out from Luke Sayers, our president. And I believe you have a copy of that there, and you're going to read out what it says so that we can all discuss it. Well, you and I can discuss it, and our viewers can make their comments on it as well if they like. Don't forget,
so
in the Blue Corner channel on YouTube or on Facebook.
Essentially, earlier this year, the Carlton AGM in February, Carlton Football Club members strongly voted in favour to adopt recommended changes to the Constitution, which included recognition of the traditional owners of the grounds on which the club play. So essentially, the Wurundjeri people, where Princes Park is located, to acknowledge the contribution of the peoples to also in the formation of the game as well. So essentially it's a really important element to the commencement of NAIDOC week, which starts tomorrow. So Luke Sayers sort of talked about Carlton's involvement and focus on NAIDOC week and how that constitutional recognition is important from that perspective.
So Carlton Football Club decided to get in before the Australian government and recognise the Indigenous people in its constitution before the Australian government recognises them in our Australian constitution, by the sounds of it.
Well, I think it's something that they wanted to do to, that seems to be the focus. Yes.
And do you think this has been done because of a burning desire to recognise the Indigenous people and what they've brought to our game, and of course recognise the land on which we have our own home ground, for example, or is this just purely because it's politically correct to do so, especially in today's day and age?
I think all clubs will be doing this. I think all clubs will be doing that. I think that it's becoming pretty much common, commonplace now. So I think it's just one of those things that all clubs will be looking to do to put into their constitution and be.
Is this purely a recognition thing, and that's as far as it goes, or is this the start of a further push towards a certain direction?
What you mean, like a treaty of some sort, or?
Well, who knows where it could finish?
I think anything would have to be voted by members to change. I don't know how you could do a treaty at a football club.
Have you noticed that this year there's been an even growing tendency to include, for example, the Indigenous names for Melbourne, Nam Football Club, and all this sort of business. I mean, we're going to where does this finish? This is what I'm asking. Is even the constitutional recognition in itself, is that where it stops and finishes, or is this going to provide the platform for even greater for more and more not only recognition but possibly even more than that in the future?
Look, I think everybody wants to celebrate the Indigenous players that Carlton have had and the influence they've had at the club. And I think there is no doubt that a lot of them have been very poorly treated back in the past. There's no doubt about that. A lot of non-Indigenous players have been poorly treated too, though, but there's definitely a trend there. And that's as much a societal thing as it is a Carlton failing, right? Essentially. So I think members care a lot about that, but you're only asking me my opinion here. Whether that means you change names and jumpers every 5 minutes and do all of that, I don't know. I don't necessarily know if that's the answer. Are they going to keep doing it? Look, Melbourne did it. I think it was a pretty good publicity. It was good publicity for them. Whether members agreed with it or not is another story. But it's becoming quite common, isn't it? I don't think it's just Carlton. I think it's the whole AFL. I think the directive is coming from the AFL. For mine.
Well, I noticed that Indigenous round, what used to be one round, in years gone by, has now become 2 rounds under the Doug Nicholls round label. And then yesterday I went and I turned on the television and watched the Adelaide-Melbourne game in Adelaide, and noticed that the Adelaide Crows were wearing Indigenous jumpers again. So I'm not sure what caused that, but they seem to have.
That must be
unless I'm mistaken, I'm pretty sure that I saw an Indigenous jumper being worn by the Adelaide Crows players yesterday.
Yeah,
and I just wonder where all of this is going to stop, if it is going to stop. Should there be a limit to how much we, I even saw, for example, when Carlton, remember a couple of weeks ago when they put out the AFL established where we were going to play rounds 20, I think it was 20, 21 and 22. Now, even when they sent an email out for those games, not only did they put the English names for the grounds, but then they put the Indigenous name for the grounds underneath that. So why? Who asked for that? Do you know what I mean? So are we going to start calling all of these grounds by Indigenous names? No. I don't think it's NAIDOC week. It was 2 weeks ago that they did it. So don't get me wrong. I've got nothing against the Indigenous or Aboriginal people. They've made a wonderful contribution to the game. But, I mean, it seems to be saturated on their contribution rather than anyone else's. I'm not saying...
We've got a couple of comments here.
Yep, go on.
We've got a couple of comments here. So Cassandra says we've got a lot to learn from Indigenous people. They've been around long. Absolutely. I think that Cassandra is...
What does that mean that they've been around longer than us? What does that mean?
I think
do they have a longer life expectancy? Do they?
No.
Do they have longer life expectancy?
I think 60,000 years is the from an evolution culturally is the point there.
I think we've all got. I think if I could just comment on that comment, I don't disagree with it, but I also think that each culture can learn from each other. Why can't Aboriginal and Indigenous people learn from other people's cultures as well? So, I mean, that's what this country is. It's a collection of all sorts of different cultures, all living under the one, well, not under the one roof, but you know what I mean, all living in the one land.
Yeah. So,
Fabio here, should the Doug Nicholls Indigenous round be aligned with NAIDOC week? I don't know, maybe, but at the end of the day, I think a lot of it's got to do with the scheduling of games like Dreamtime at the G. So the AFL would probably schedule the Doug Nicholls round around that. And that's usually in the first 7 or 8 weeks, maybe 9, most years. So I don't know whether they could schedule it in line with the NAIDOC week. I just wonder whether it's all starting to become a bit too one-sided in terms of recognising just the Indigenous contribution to our game. What about the Europeans? What about, I mean, you could argue the point that there's been lots of other cultures that have contributed to the game as well, not just the Indigenous culture. So I just wonder whether we're a bit obsessed at the moment with all this, and that it's all becoming a bit too shove it down your throat stuff.
Well, I
wonder whether people are feeling like a lot of this is being shoved down their throat, and they're at saturation point where they're just like, I've had enough of all this being shoved down my throat every week.
I think that you're starting to get into, every round has a theme, number one, and then number two, it is.
Well, that's another thing. The AFL's got that many things going in different rounds. We had the Danny Frawley match a couple of weeks ago. We've had, you have the Maddie's game. Have they done that yet this year? The St Kilda and Richmond teams? I'm not sure. They usually have Maddie's match. And don't get me wrong, all of these games might, be played for all the right reasons and good causes and what have you. But how many different causes are you going to have matches for?
No,
I mean,
I think
it's getting to the point where I think it's just lost its impact. And I think a lot of people are over it. They just want to go to the football and watch a game of footy.
I think that the Indigenous Nicholls round, I think, is fantastic. I think it's really, really good. But we're starting to see a lot of things, and I liked it when personally I liked it when it was just focused around the one and a bit weeks or 2 weeks at the most. That's what I liked. So
now that we've got NAIDOC week, they're doing it again.
Well, I just like the focus around that game and everything. But then again, I don't think you generally the crowds after having that focus. I think the general football public thinks a little bit more about Indigenous people and the challenges they've had and everything else. And I think the contributions that they've also made to AFL, I think that's definitely gives people a perspective. But I don't know, call me off fashioned a little bit, but you have a few of these rounds, yes. But
Steve, my point is this. It's increasing all the time. The amount of recognition, the level of recognition, the different things that are happening in different weeks is increasing all the time, and it's all for the one group of people. Yeah. Where's the balance? Where is the balance? There is no balance. It's very, very one-sided. And, like Jacinta Price, someone who I respect enormously, an Aboriginal woman who's now in Parliament, in the Senate, and she speaks up for the Aboriginal cause all the time. But she says there's no point playing victim, and there's no point just doing things for just Aboriginal people. There are people all over the country who are disadvantaged, right? There are people all around the country that deserve recognition. Why just single out just one culture?
Yeah, I think the specifics around this, though, Vince, there's been quite a lot of institutionalized racism and all the rest around that. So I think that there is some. They're trying to highlight a bit more about that. But I think your point is around just the more than one round. Yeah, there's a lot of rounds, isn't there?
All I'm noticing is that it's just slowly chipping away as these things often are. And when you accumulate all of this, it ends up becoming quite a substantial increase in whether it's recognition or whether it's taking up, games with this and that and the other thing. I just wonder whether it's ever going to be enough, because in a lot of people's eyes, it's never going to be enough. The more you do, the better it is. And they'll keep pushing for more, doesn't matter how much you give. It's a bit like, a spoilt brat, keep giving them more and they'll want more again. It's an insatiable desire, unlimited. So I don't know.
I don't know what the public, it's up to the public generally. The members,
I know that. I understand that. I'm just simply echoing a lot of the thoughts of people I know who have just about had a gutful. All right. So now we also had the news during the week that young Tom Williamson is taking a break from AFL football. The club has been in contact with him regularly since he took leave, and now he will be vacating his spot on the list. And we wish him well, I guess. Obviously battling a few demons, and we certainly wish him well. And yes, Gina, thank you very much for your comment there. We certainly hope he gets better, and we see him back on the park at some stage with someone.
It's interesting, isn't it? With players and individuals you may see at your workplace or just in your day-to-day interactions. You just don't know what's going on, between the two ears or what's going on at home. They may put on a brave face and, get through and smile, but behind it all, they're really, really battling. And we then love to, kick these players, and they're on big money and, they put themselves out there and so forth. But you just don't know what's going on behind the scenes when I know when they take the field, they're fit to play and all the rest of it, but you just don't really know, do you? And you don't know what the clubs don't know either. You just don't know what's happening. It's there's so much has got to go right to win a game of football, and if the player isn't in the right headspace, either football is an escape where they're free from their mental demons and they just use that between 2:10 and 4:45, or sorry, you can't say that anymore, whatever time they play, for Thursday night, whatever. I used to say 2:10 to 4:45 on a Saturday, but whatever time they do play now, whenever that is, they use that as an escape, or it almost makes it worse. And they're under the microscope. And in the middle of the MCG, when you make a mistake, there's nowhere to hide, especially when you've got, people sitting in the stands that aren't playing. It's easy for them to criticise, right? It is. But that being said, I know the player takes the field and it's a professional industry, but it's difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, look, it is. Richard Hussein is commenting all the way from Dubai. G'day, Rash. Great to see you, mate. I've said it for ages. Clubs need to have a mental health coach. It's very serious, especially early. Yeah, hard to disagree with that. I guess, we have all of these coaches that have to coach them physically and also tactically. But, yes, there doesn't seem to be too many mental coaches on AFL lists anywhere. What's he saying now? There needs to be more general awareness about mental health, and maybe the media will settle down also. Yeah, maybe. It's a minefield, isn't it? The mental side of everything. And look, some players find it difficult to cope. Others don't seem to find any trouble at all. But I do wonder about the mental issues because of the fact that it's such a high-profile occupation, and wherever you go, especially if you live in a city like Melbourne, but even in other football states like Adelaide and WA,
Really.
Yeah, I mean, wherever you go, you must be, living in a bubble while you're playing AFL football. And then, of course, a lot of players have trouble once they get delisted or once they retire, and all of a sudden they struggle with life after football. So, yeah, I think there's got to be a lot more education around that side of things, and making young guys aware of the fact that they're probably living in a bit of a bubble and that they need to prepare themselves for whenever their careers end. And some of them will end a lot sooner than they might think. Some of them will be thinking, I've got 10 years in this game, or at least 10 years. Sometimes a couple of knee injuries might cut short your career prematurely.
And prepare them for, and it's not easy, and we're all armchair experts, aren't we? But prepare them for the ups and downs. The highs, as we said earlier, the highs are never maybe too high, and the lows are never too low, right? The ups and downs. I remember. I know it's all about being vulnerable now and all this sort of stuff, as they call it in the trendy word. But I think from a mental side, and you don't know what happens at clubland behind closed doors, but Damien Hardwick, I think, nailed it. Richmond had that 2016 season where they lost to Sydney by 100 points in the last game. And finished bottom six or something, or whatever wherever they were 13th or something on the ladder. And
your internet's going a bit funny there, Steve. You might want to move around a little bit there, mate. I think you're getting a little bit glitchy.
Okay.
Your internet's not flashing.
You can take over, Vince, maybe. But I think that's an important thing to do.
Yes, indeed. Look, I'm going to just quickly change subject because we're already well over time here tonight. But let's talk about Carlton's next game. And by the way, Tommy Williamson, we do wish him well. He did have a lot of back injuries initially early in his career, and not sure if he's still struggling with injuries, but he is a skillful player that probably deserves a chance at the top level with somebody. And wherever he ends up, we certainly wish him well. All right. Now, Carlton at the end of this round has ended up 5th on the ladder after our loss to St Kilda. We are now a full game plus percentage behind Fremantle and Brisbane and Geelong, and 2 games in percentage behind Melbourne, who are at the top of the ladder. So Melbourne's on 48 points, 139.6. Geelong's in second on 44 points. That's 11 wins, 135.6. And those 2 teams play each other this coming Thursday night at Geelong. So what a blockbuster of a game that'll be on Thursday night. Who do you reckon you'd be tipping for that one?
Remember Geelong played Melbourne. It was about
10 years ago, and they beat them by a record margin, I think.
I was going to say that, but not
about
that
180 odd points, I think it might have been.
It wasn't that game specifically, but it was the one where Geelong got blown away in that second half at Geelong. Did Melbourne beat them by 10?
Oh, that was the last game of last year where Melbourne secured top spot on the ladder. Max Gawn kicked the goal after the siren and they won the game. I think they were nearly 8 goals behind at one stage, Melbourne, in that game.
There was that game, and I don't think Melbourne is scared to go down there anymore.
No. No, they're not. But look, Max Gawn's still out of the side. Apparently, he'll be coming back a bit earlier than first expected. But look, I hope Melbourne wins, but I've got a funny feeling Geelong might pull out all stops and beat them.
It'll be a close one. I think the Cats just, but I think it'll be a really good game. I think it could be
well, the Cats normally have the umpires on their side every time, so it's pretty hard to beat a team plus the umpires. Honestly, it sickens me how much these umpires favour Geelong.
If you're in a marginal seat, you get the umpires as well as the stadium money.
Anyway, Brisbane are third on 44 points, 126.9. They came back to form the other night against the Bulldogs. Fremantle just got over the line against Port Adelaide tonight. They're back to the winners list. They're also on 44 points, 121.3. And then Carlton in fifth, one game behind on 40 points, 112.1. And joining us on 40 points after winning their sixth match in a row is Collingwood on 106.1. And they play North Melbourne in the next match.
Yeah. Wow.
And we play West Coast. So both Carlton and Collingwood are playing the bottom two teams on the ladder in this next round.
I think West Coast in Perth is a tougher assignment, though, Vince.
I'm heading over there this week. I'm heading over this week for this game. And, yes, they've been playing a lot better. I know they lost to Richmond today by 35 points at the MCG, but they did beat Essendon last week, and they had only just failed against Geelong, who were second on the ladder, the week before that by, I think, 3 goals. So they won't be quite the easy beats that we might have first thought. But we're playing them in the final game of next round, next Sunday afternoon, 2:40 p.m. in Perth, 4:40 p.m. on the in the eastern states. What do you think, Steve? What do you think? Carlton wins, and if so, by how much?
Well, I think Carlton just win. I don't think it's going to be an easy game. And also, you've got you look at West Coast; they're starting to get their players back. They were very good against Richmond today. With obviously still lost by nearly 5 goals or so, but they were very very good and pushed them. And they pushed Geelong.
I think you'll find that they lost Elliot Yeo today with a hamstring injury.
Yeah.
So that'll be another out for them. But Nick Natanui's back. He would have needed the run today.
Yeah, he looked like he'd been in a decent paddock. But I mean, he'll get a few. He obviously hasn't been able to train very, very much at all. Poor guy. And I think as he gets going, as he gets more fitness, he'll be better, getting more training load under his belt. Look, it'll be a good game. I don't think you can compare Collingwood playing North Melbourne to Carlton playing West Coast over there. I think there'll be 2 different games. I think it'll be a very entertaining game, but Carlton will win by probably 2 or 3 goals. I wouldn't think much more than that.
Really? That close?
I'd say 3 goals, let's call it. I don't think it's going to be that easy at all. It's not going to be an easy game.
Well, it's probably going to be the last time we play West Coast with a player by the name of Josh Kennedy playing for them. He's turning 35 next month. He's been a fantastic player for them. Here we are 7 years after Chris Judd retired, around about this time. Probably would have been a little bit earlier than this. Probably would have been about round 12 or 13 in 2015 that Juddy did his knee against Adelaide and then immediately retired. So it's 7 years and Josh Kennedy's still playing.
I remember
7 years since we've seen Chris Judd on a football field, though.
Josh Kennedy got drafted, I think it was it maybe 2004 or thereabouts. I remember watching him at 2005 running around Crane Street with the then Northern Bull Ants, which then became the Northern Blues. And watching him playing there as a very
17-year-old,
and just thought, if you were to say to me, I always thought he was talented, but if you thought this guy's going to win a flag and top the goal
and a couple of Coleman medals,
yeah, absolutely. And I would have thought, probably not. I'm not saying he's no good, and he's just blossomed, hasn't he? He's just gone from strength to strength to strength and become just that. 10 years he's been that mainstay full forward, hasn't he? That focal point that and in clutch moments too. He's kicked clutch goals, taking clutch marks. Just a club champion really for them.
Yes, he's been a fantastic servant of the West Coast Eagles ever since he went over there at the end of 2007. Here we are 15 years later, and he's still playing for them and doing well. Anyway, look, my prediction is Carlton. I think we should have a relatively comfortable win. I don't think it'll be a huge win, but I think it'll be comfortable. I'd say, what do I say? 29 points.
It always fascinates me how people get the points margin, you know, sort of. Well, 4 goals, 5, is it?
Knowing the way we're kicking for goal, it'll be something like 3 goals, 11. Or 2 goals, 17. No, I think it'll be 29 points. But they'll put up a bit of an effort, but I think we will be too good for them. And look, every time this year we've had a loss, we've responded the following week and won the game. And so, look, West Coast have only won the 2 games for the year. They're not travelling that well. So, yes, Cassandra, we need to boost our percentage. You're quite right. So if there was ever a potential for a percentage boosting win, this would be the game, because I don't see too many others where we're going to be able to boost our percentage. I think the next lowest ranked team that we'll be playing will be either Adelaide or GWS. I think we play Adelaide in Adelaide, and we play GWS over here in Melbourne. So I can't see Carlton putting on percentage boosting wins against either one of those.
No.
But potentially West Coast, yes. But I think they have improved in recent weeks.
I agree.
All right, Stevie, thanks very much for joining us again this week. It's been an interesting chat, and thank you to everyone who's been watching the show and contributed to it. We really appreciate your loyalty and your participation. And as I said, I'll be over in Perth next week for the West Coast Carlton game, and that probably means, because it will... Am I still on?
Yeah, you're on, Vince. Yeah.
Am I still on? Okay. I just had a phone call come through, and all of a sudden my face looks big. On the screen, I'll sit back again. So I might have to try and join you after the game, Steve, or if we think that's a bit too hard, we might have to make it the day after. But I'd probably say... What's that?
If you join us after the game, can you get the Great Southern Bank and all the sponsors' logos in the background?
Well, I'll tell you who I'm over there with. I'll be over there with Rocco from the Jumper Punch. So we're going to be over there enjoying a weekend of all sorts of entertainment. So and catching up with a few of the old Carlton players from WA, like John Dorotich and Richard Dennis and guys like that, Steve Darui, and some of those great names from the 80s and 90s.
Oh, geez, you're starting to warm that. Remember Ross Ditchburn?
Yes, Ross Ditchburn. He'll be invited to come down too from his farm.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if he'll be able to make it, but hopefully he does.
Yeah.
Maybe Wayne Blackwell, maybe Warren Ralph, maybe. Geez, I'm trying to think of some more there from way back then. But
Richard Dennis?
Oh, probably. I did mention Richard Dennis and Matt Clappe as well, and Earl Spalding. So I think as many of those that can make it, we're going to try and have a big interview with all of them. So watch out for that one on the Jumper Punch when it gets released. But
that'll be great.
In the meantime, watch the Jumper Punch this Tuesday night at 8 o'clock with Rocco and the boys. And don't forget, on Wednesday night, Joe Lutzer and Chris Beach will bring you the unofficial selection committee, or whatever they call themselves. What do they call unofficial match committee, I think they call themselves, where they'll be going through the expected changes in the Carlton team. I'll be flying over on Wednesday, as a matter of fact, so probably have to catch up with them on another occasion. I won't be able to join them this week on their show. They normally invite me to come on and give them my thoughts, but anyway, this week they'll have to probably do it with someone else. Anyway, so don't forget to watch that at 8 o'clock on Wednesday night. So hopefully with a bit of luck, I'll see you on Sunday night at 8 o'clock from somewhere in Perth. Not sure exactly where, but probably celebrating a Carlton win.
We might push the broadcast back a bit, won't we, Vince, just to give you that time?
Well, it's up to you, mate. If you want to do it at 9 o'clock, I don't mind. But I don't think it has to be the case.
All right, the game will have just finished, though. You sure?
The game will have finished about 3/4 of an hour earlier. So, yeah, we might have to just push it back a little.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll work that out.
Give us time to find somewhere that we can actually talk to you. I'll make sure Rocco comes onto the show and talks to you as well.
Absolutely. So
we might have to get another co-host for you next Sunday, and probably I doubt that we'll be able to come on for a full hour, but we'll certainly join you for part of the show. It might have to be you and Benji.
Even if it's 30 minutes, that's fine. It's good to get you. It's good the fact that you can enter the People's Republic of Western Australia now, and
yeah, exactly.
And enjoy that.
Oh, don't worry. We'll probably all have to wear masks and all that sort of thing on the plane, and probably have to check into our hotel with a mask on as well. And
no, I don't think you have to do that now.
Actually, I don't call them masks.
Enjoy your trip.
I don't call them masks. I call them face nappies.
Enjoy your trip anyway, and we'll
Thank you.
Catch up.
Yes, we'll be catching the red eye back to Melbourne late on Sunday night. We'll catch you later on. So thanks very much, everyone, for joining us tonight. And yes, as Steve said, we'll look forward to joining you next Sunday, hopefully after a Carlton win against West Coast Eagles over in Perth. Until then, go Blues.
Go Blues.